Okay, so yes, we are recording. Let's go ahead and get started. As you're working with your coordinated entry, the process, I'll go through the entire process today, but in a nutshell, what happens is you have someone who might have a title of assessor who sees the clients, conducts the VI SPDAT assessment in HMIS, and depending on the score, then refers the client to the community queue. From there, a matchmaker logs in and works with the community queue. The matchmaker opens up the referral that was sent by the assessor and sends that client's referral to an agency, or specifically a program within an agency that the matchmaker feels is a good fit for the client based on the client's score and the client's needs. So then after that, after the referral has been sent to the program at a specific agency, then that agency works with the referral. They work with the client to determine whether or not the client is eligible for their program. And if the client is eligible, then they work with the client to obtain any necessary documentation to enroll the client in the program. Sometimes the client is not eligible, so perhaps the agency will refer the client back to the community queue so that the matchmaker can then refer the client to another agency. So that's the process in a nutshell, and I will go through each one of those steps so that you can see how this all works in clarity. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with a client who's come in. We're going to do the VI SPDAT and refer the client to the community queue. So I'm going to log in here to my training agency as an assessor. So this is, excuse me, there we go. So I've logged in as an assessor. I'm going to be doing the VI SPDAT for my client Bumblebee, who's come in today. What you'll notice as we're going through this, I've already created Bumblebee's profile. So if the client that you're working with already has a profile, you don't need to create one. If the client you're working with does not have a profile, then you'll want to create one. And actually, I'm going to click back on my search tab to show you how you can search for a client. I do a search for using the first 3 letters of the first name and the first 3 letters of the last name to make sure that the search comes up with any possible clients who have already been entered in the system and that the system thinks might be a possible match. So I do a search for Bumblebee, and I see that Bumblebee is here on the bottom. Okay. Now you notice that he's over here on the right-hand side because I was just working with his record to create the profile. So if you see the client that you need to do the assessment for over here on the right, you can simply click on their name to access their profile. Or if you don't see them there, you can search just like I did here and click on the edit that comes up next to their name. So if you do a search and there are no results in the search, then that means the client's profile has not yet been created, and you'll need to do that. I won't go through those steps today because that's a bit more general, and the assumption with today's training is that you already have that process down and are actually working within the client record already. Okay. So when you're in the client's profile, you see we have our global tabs up at the top. And to do the VI SPDAT, you'll want to click on the Assessments tab here. So I click on that. Now, again, this is a training environment, so you see we have a lot of assessments listed here. In your actual instance, you're probably only going to see 4, maybe 5, and those will be the VIF SPDAT pre-screen for families V1, V2. You'll see the VI SPDAT pre-screen for single adults V1, V2. You may also see the youth SPDAT. So just know that in your instance, you're not going to see all of these listed here because this is a training environment. So to do the assessment, For your client, you want to locate the appropriate assessment, and I believe that you're going to be using the pre-screen V2. So that's what we are working with today. Now, to save a little bit of time for this training and to make sure that we have plenty of time at the end for any questions, I already did the assessment earlier today so that we wouldn't have to spend time going through each and every question, because it is pretty lengthy. But to conduct the, or to do the actual assessment, you located it and merely click on Start. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So here you have a blank assessment that you could do for the client. Okay, I'm just going to go back to the one that I already did today. And let me open that one up so you can see what it looks like. So here's the assessment that I did a little earlier today. You see that I've answered each of these questions. So as you're working with your clients, you ask them these questions. And from what I understand with the policies and procedures that I believe are in draft form at this time, you want to make sure that you ask the client these questions and try not to answer the questions in a way how you see the client. So you want to try to be as objective as possible. So you'll answer each question, and depending on how the questions are answered, the system then processes all of the questions and all of the answers, and then provides you with a score for the assessment. So once the assessment is actually scored, you'll see if you go back to the list of assessments under the assessment history, you have the date that it was completed, and we have the score here. And when I hover over that, you can see what the scores were in each section of the VI SPDAT for a total score of 11. So you see when I answered the questions on this particular assessment, for the general section, the client received 0 points. For the history of housing and homelessness, 2, risks 4, and so on and so forth, for a total of 11. Okay, so if I want to, I'm going to click here on eligibility. After you have completed the assessment and click Save at the bottom, you'll be taken to this particular screen here. And in this screen, you can see here is that total score of 11. And here are the individual section scores. So the history of housing and homelessness, 2, risks 4, general 0, socialization and daily functioning 2, and wellness is 3. So yes, as I said, after you do the assessment and click on Save, you'll be taken to this screen where you can see this information. And all of this that you see here, again, this is a training environment. More than likely, you won't see this kind of stuff in the actual instance. And if you do, you want to really just ignore it and scroll all the way down to the bottom until you see this refer directly to Community Queue. When you click on this button, this is how you're going to refer the client and send the referral on to the Community Queue. Okay. So I click on that, refer directly to Community Queue, and here I have the option of writing a note. Perhaps the client prefers a certain type of housing. So you could add that note here, prefers LGBTQ housing. Okay, you can format the note, you can bold or italicize it, you can add a numbered list or a bulleted list. Any kind of note that you want to add specifically about the client or the client's referral, you can add that here. You don't have to, it's just an option. So then I click on Send Referral, and that sends the referral on to the Community Queue. Okay, so here we see a little bit of information about the referral that I just made. It was referred to the Community Queue, right? The agency that sent the referral, that's the the agency I'm logged in as today. And the date of the referral, days pending. This would be the number of days that the referral has been pending on the queue. So obviously it's 0 days because we just sent that today, whether or not the client is qualified, etc. As you can see, there's a lot of different information here. Okay. So, and here is the note that I just wrote about the referral. And then down here at the bottom, we have a little bit of history that we'll see about the referral. Okay, community queue, added to the queue, how many days pending, and the person who sent the referral. Okay, so that is what the what an assessor does. I'm seeing there are some questions. Okay, so we'll get to the questions at the end. Becky, I mentioned that that you guys are going to be using V1 of the assessment, and that's totally fine. The process won't change, except that in the beginning, instead of selecting the V2, you'll select the V1. Okay, so that's no problem there. The rest of the process doesn't change at all based on the type of type of assessment that you do. Okay. So that is how you do the VI SPDAT and send the referral on to the community queue. So the next step in the whole process is for the matchmaker to log in and to look at the community queue and send the referral onto the appropriate agency. So what I'm going to do is log out, and I'm going to log back in as a matchmaker. Okay, so now I'm logging in as a matchmaker, and I'm going to show you what it would look like, or what happens when the matchmaker works with the community queue and sends the referrals on to appropriate agencies. Okay, so here I am as a matchmaker, and I go to my referrals tab so I can take a look at the community queue. Once I click on my referrals tab, I see I have some other tabs here in the referrals area. I want to see who's on the community queue, so I click on the community queue tab. And here I have a list of all the clients that are pending in the community queue. As you can see, we don't have too many. We just have Bumblebee, but that's okay. We don't need to see a whole heck of a lot in order to understand the process. So here's my list of clients who are on the community queue, the date they were referred, and the number of days that they have been pending on the queue. So now what I want to do is I want to look at this referral. I just want to show you a few things before I send the referral on to the agency. When I hover over the client's name, I see edit, or I see that I can click on the client's name. In this case, I'm going to click on edit so that I can access the referral. Okay. And we see I have some information here. I just want to show you this real quick. So let's say the matchmaker is working or discovers that the client has located housing and no longer needs assistance in the community and needs to be removed from the queue. When I click on edit, I see I have this remove from queue area and reason for removal. If I click on the drop down, I see I have a lot of options here about why I might remove the client from the queue. Self-resolved would be the appropriate option based on the scenario that I just mentioned, where the client has obtained housing elsewhere. So I might click on self-resolved and then the date that the client should be removed from the queue. I would select the date here and then click on Save Changes. Okay, and that effectively removes the client from the queue. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to keep the client on the queue. Just wanted to let you know that that's how you do that. So I'm just going to go back to my community queue here. So to send the referral on to a specific agency, what I want to do is find this active agency drop down here. So I select the agency that I want to send the client to. So I'm going to select my Julie Test Agency because they have a program that I know or that I believe has an opening, and this client would be appropriate for that particular program. Or I should say that program would be appropriate for the client. Okay, so when I select my the appropriate agency here, just going to click on search to kind of lock that in. And as soon as the page refreshes, I see there's now this kind of like a program icon. And when I hover over that, what I see is a list of 8 of programs at my agency that I selected there, an active agency, to which I can refer the client. Okay, so to refer the client to one of those agencies, I click on Edit when I hover over the name. And in this Reassign section, I select the program. You'll notice that these are some of the same programs that we saw in that other list. So I want to refer the client to the permanent housing program there at that agency. So I select that program and click on Save Changes. Okay, now if I click back on my Community Queue tab here, I no longer see Bumblebee because I sent Bumblebee over to another agency. And if I look at sent, I don't see anybody there. Okay, so there in my community queue, Bumblebee is no longer there. Okay, so that is how the matchmaker works within the community queue and sends the referral to a specific program at an agency. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as a user at the agency that received the referral and work with the referral. I'll show you how that looks. So I'm going to log out and I'm going to log back in here as a user at the agency that received the referral. Okay, so here I am at the test agency. And now I want to see whether or not I've received any referrals from the community queue. So I click on my referrals tab. And here I see Bumblebee. I'm in my pending area. Here I see Bumblebee. I see here the program that Bumblebee was referred to at my agency. And I see the name of the agency that conducted the VI SPDAT and submitted the referral to the community queue in the first place. So there are a couple of different things that might happen when an agency is actually working with a referral. They might be working with the client to determine whether or not the client is eligible for the program. Perhaps they're working with the client to obtain the required documentation to enroll the client in the program. A couple of different things that might be happening. So we'll go through the different things that the agency can do with the referral so that the community and the matchmaker are aware of what exactly is going on. Okay. So if I click, when I hover over Bumblebee's name, I see that Edit tab to the left. So I click on Edit so that I can access that referral. Now, one thing that the community wants to or will need to be aware of, and that your client should be aware of, is that they will need to check in every, I believe it's 30 days. I believe that's the timeline the community has set up. So the client will want to check in every 30 days to ensure that their referral is still active. If the client does not check in every 30 days, then they will automatically, or at least once every 30 days, then the referral will automatically be removed from the queue and the process will need to begin again. So it's very simple for a client to check in. There are a few different ways that a client can do it. One is, as you can see here on the referral, I'm the agency that received the referral. And when I access it, I see this check-in button right here. So if I click that button, that effectively checks in the client and the referral remains active in the system. Sometimes, though, a client is on the queue for a little while and maybe isn't working directly with an agency to try to get into one of their programs, so that the client will need some other way to check in. And very simply, all that needs to happen is the client can call an agency and say, I'm just checking in. And that agency can go into the referral and click this check-in box. It makes sense for the client to do that, possibly either with the matchmaker or with the assessor. They can click that check-in box. Another way that they can do it is, they can do it in person as well. Whether they do it over the phone or in person, it's the same. The agency just needs to go in and click that check-in button. Or if a client receives a service in the community from an agency that is entering that information and that service into HMIS, that will have the same effect as this manually checking the client in. So let's say that your client is it has been sleeping on the streets and had the assessment done, and now the referral is on the queue. If the client goes to an emergency shelter and stays at that emergency shelter for a day or 3 days or 7 days, and that emergency shelter enters that bed night into HMIS, then the client would have been considered checked in. Okay, so a couple of different ways to check the client in, but they do need to check in at least once every 30 days to make sure that they stay on the queue. And again, if there has been no activity within that period of time, then the referral will automatically be removed from the queue. And if the client comes in, 31 days or 32 days, then a new assessment will need to be done, and that assessment sent to the community queue. Okay. So as I said, I can check the client in by clicking on check in, and it's that simple. You saw I just checked it, the page refreshed. So in this case, they'll say that I'm working with the client to try to determine whether or not he's eligible for our program. So I see this status button here in the drop down. If I change that to pending in process, that's an indicator that we're working with the client to try to get him into our program. So if I change the status to pending in process, I'm going to click on Save Changes. And you see I get the message that my changes have been saved successfully. I'm going to click back on my Pending tab so you can see what that looks like now. So now we see we have 0 total, 1 in process. That 0 total is because the referral was just made today. But what you'll see as time goes on, and you're working more with the referrals, the total numbers, the total number of days that the referral has been pending in the community queue as well as with the agency, and then the number in process is the number of days in process with my agency, with this Julie Test agency and the Julie PH program. Okay, so I've indicated that we're working with the client. So now what I want to do is I want to actually go ahead and I'll show you what you would need to do if you wanted to deny the referral and send that referral back to the community queue. So if I hover over the name, I see edit, I click on that. Okay. So for status, if I wanted to send the referral back to the community queue, because we've denied the client's enrollment in the program, I just click on denied. And then you see I have the option here to send to community queue. And I believe the process in the community is once the client is denied, it is to send the referral back to the community queue. But you'll want to check with your community to make sure that that is in fact what is required. So if you want to send the referral back to the queue, you just click on that drop down, select yes. Then you have the option of indicating the reason that the referral was denied. You see we have a lot of different options here: lack of eligibility, needs could not be met, they didn't agree to the rules of the program, or maybe the client didn't show up or call for their appointment, etc. So you see we have a few different options here. You select what's most appropriate. I'm just going to say that full capacity. And then if you want to add some notes about the denial, you can indicate those notes here. Okay. So that's how, and then you would just click on Save Changes. And that is how you you deny a referral and then send the referral back to the community queue. Now, for today's training, I don't want to do that. I'm going to change this back to pending in process. Okay, so I'm going to click back on my pending tab so that I can see my referral. Okay, so we're going to say that we've been working with the client to determine eligibility. And we've decided the client is in fact eligible, and we're going to enroll the client in the program. So to enroll a client into a program through the referral, you want to make sure that you're in your referrals in the pending tab. And this time when you hover over the row and over the name, you see that there's an option to link when I hover over their name. So when I hover over their name and click on it, then I'm going to be taken directly to the client's profile. Here we have Bumblebee. Then I'm going to click on my Programs tab so that I see a list of all of the programs here at my agency that I can refer the client into. You'll notice that we have this release of information is missing. Please add one to ensure compliance. You may or may not see that. Depends on the applicability of the releases of information. If your agency is required to complete, have the client sign a release of information and you see this message, you simply click here to be taken to an area where you can indicate some information about the release of information. We're going to say that the client signed a release of information on September 1st. The system automatically calculates 3 years out. That's just the setting that we have here in this training system. Your end date auto calculation might differ by a year or two. The documentation, we select the appropriate documentation. I'm going to say attached PDF. I select my file and click on open, and then click on add record. And once I've done that, then I see I have my I have the release of information at my agency. Okay. So I'm going to I want to go back to that referral. So I'm going to click back on my search tab here. I want to make sure that when I'm enrolling the client, I'm doing it through the referral. That's the only way that I can indicate the client has been referred or has been enrolled through the referral. And that's how you ensure that the client's name is removed from the pending list and removed from the community queue. So again, I'm on my referrals. I'm in my pending tab. I see the client that I want to enroll in the program, Bumblebee. I click on Bumblebee's name where I'm taken to his profile. Then I click on my Programs tab to access the list of programs at my agency that I can enroll him into. And today I'm enrolling him into the permanent housing program. That's the program that he was referred to. So I click on the down arrow. And you'll notice when you're enrolling a client through a referral, you'll see this information right here with the checkbox that the program placement is a result of the referral provided by BitFocus System. BitFocus System is the agency that originally conducted the VI SPDAT and sent the referral on to the community queue. So when you see that, you know that you are processing an enrollment that is the result of a referral. So if you don't see that, then it hasn't been done properly if you're working within the community queue and in the coordinated entry process. Okay, so I'm going to leave that checked because I want to indicate that the client's enrollment is the result of the referral. And then I click on enroll. I'm going to go through the enrollment screen very quickly. I do want to do this so that you can see what happens on the referrals. So I'm just going to click a couple of things here. No, I wanted to say 1 year or more, 1 year or longer. So again, just going through this stuff pretty quickly here so that we can see how things look on the queue afterwards. So yes, this is a permanent housing program and he is required to have a disability. So, oops. Again, just going through this very quickly so that you can see the process. So as the agency is working with the client and they're enrolling the client through the referral, they do this enrollment screen, click on Save and Close. And once the system has processed that, then we see my changes have been saved successfully. I have successfully enrolled the client into this permanent housing program, and the enrollment was a result of a referral that's received from the community queue. So I'm going to show you now the referral list so that you can see that the client is no longer there. I click on my search tab to go back to my home page. I click on Referrals, and I can see that Bumblebee is no longer on the my pending tab. Okay. So I want to show you now. I'm going to log back in as the matchmaker. So I sign out here. I just want to, that's basically the process, right? Not basically, that is the process. I just want to show you now what the matchmaker sees. So before we saw that Bumblebee was on the community queue, right? And we sent that referral on to the Julie Test Agency, where Julie Test Agency enrolled the client through the referral. So now I'm logged back in as the matchmaker, and I want to take a look at my community queue. So I go to my referrals, go to my community queue, and I no longer see Bumblebee there. Okay, because Bumblebee was sent to the Julie Test Agency. The Julie Test Agency processed the referral, enrolled the client as a result of the referral, and Bumblebee is no longer on the community queue as a result. Okay, so that that is the process in 35 minutes or less. So now I'm going to take a look at the questions that we have here. You're using version 1. Who can see those referral notes? It's whoever's working with the referral. Becky, that question came from Becky. Who can see those referral notes? So whoever's working with the referral can see those notes. Okay, so I've since, I've worked with Bumblebee's referral, and so Bumblebee is no longer on the queue. I can't see that referral anymore, but whoever is working with the referral can see those notes. Okay. The next question comes from Becky. Does everyone see the same community queue as the matchmaker? Yes, so everybody can see it, but it's only the matchmaker who can actually work with the community queue referrals and send them on to agencies. Other people, I mean, it does depend on their level of access, whether or not they have access to referrals. But most users with the agency staff access can see the queue. They just can't do anything with the community queue referrals. Okay. The next question, and if I'm not answering the questions thoroughly, please feel free to write a follow-up question so that I make sure that I answer everything thoroughly. Okay, so the next question comes from Juliana. Where do you see that the client is appropriate for any agency? You're not going to see that necessarily here within the system. That's going to be something within the community outside of HMIS where they work with the matchmaker. So the matchmaker will need to have knowledge of the programs within the community to know what the eligibility requirements are, what types of disabling conditions or chronically homeless status, things like that a client would need to have in order to be eligible for a program. So those discussions should be had within the community. Perhaps the agencies email the matchmaker to let the matchmaker know that they have vacancies and what the admission requirements are, the eligibility requirements. So the matchmaker will need to have some knowledge of the programs in the community and what the eligibility requirements are in order to know whether or not a client is eligible for a program and if a referral to that program is appropriate. Okay. Okay, so the next question comes from Juliana, and that is, does everyone in the agency have access to see the referrals they have received, or is it one specified person for the agency? I believe that the policy or the procedures in place for your community are that it's a navigator who is going to see the referrals. Again, this all depends on the level of access that's been set up for the users at the agency, but I believe that it's a navigator who is going to see the referrals and work with the clients. So yeah, it should be one specific person. I'm not entirely certain if the policies and procedures have been finalized, so that process may change. But you'll want to check in with your continuum and your COC lead, I guess, to be sure how that procedure is going to play out. Okay. The next question is from Juliana. When the client checks in, where does it show where the client is checking in at so we can find them if they are not with the agency that the client is referred to? The system doesn't necessarily show where the client checked in. What you will see, there are a couple of different things here. So if the client has been checked in because he or she enrolled in an emergency shelter program or perhaps a services only program, you will be able to see, I'm going to log out here and show you what that looks like. You will be able to see in the client's history what program the client enrolled in. So, whoops, wrong password. So I'm just going to take a look at Bumblebee here. So if Bumblebee, if I go to my history tab, so if Bumblebee had checked in by being enrolled in an emergency shelter program or in some sort of services only program and received a service, I would see that in the history. I would see they're here in this kind of a yellowish green. There's this permanent housing program enrollment. So if it was an emergency shelter, I would see that there was an emergency shelter enrollment. And I could use that. I could then contact that agency and that program to say, hey, the client checked in, was enrolled in your emergency shelter program. I have a bed and, so I just wanted to check in, make sure you still have contact with your client. If the client has checked in by calling or by, or by stopping into a coordinated entry hub of sorts, you wouldn't necessarily see that. However, what a matchmaker or a person conducting the VI SPDAT can do is they can add some locations for the client so that you can see different areas where the client is located. Not sure if that's exactly what you're looking for, but it is a place where you can show the locations of the client. Perhaps they are known to congregate in specific locations, maybe at a 7-Eleven in the area, and you want to reach out to them there. You can indicate that as a location here in the Locations tab. What you can also do when the assessor is conducting when they do the assessment, I'm going to go back to Bumblebee here and take a look at the assessment that was done so you can see, let's go back to my assessments. One of the questions, it's not scored, not part of the scoring, but one of the questions in the assessment, the very last questions, is on a regular day, where's it easiest to find you? So you can look at that particular location there and see, if you need to reach out to the client, you can look at this here and contact them this way. Okay. Also, when the client is checked in, you have the option of writing various notes about the referral, adding some notes. So in those notes, you can indicate the client checked in, where they checked in, and the location. Okay. So let's see, go back to my questions. The next question is from Juliana again. How do we refer the client back to the community queue when they are not eligible for that program? I think that I covered that. That when an agency is working with the client to determine eligibility, if they have decided the client is not eligible, they can change the status to denied and indicate the reason for the denial, whatever that reason may be, and then click on yes to send the client back to the community queue. Okay. The next question is from Becky. What do we do to complete the referral? So I believe that I covered that. And the next question is from Becky. So what happens if the enrollment didn't happen through the referral? So then if that happens, then the client will remain on the community queue, and you can reach out to the help desk if you want to have the client removed from the queue. The matchmaker can go in and remove the client from the queue, or you can reach out to our help desk to request that the referral be removed from the queue. So that's how you do that. The next question is from Becky. We had a name last week that only Matchmaker could see. Okay. So I'm not sure what the question is there. It could be that the client's record was marked as private. That could be why only the matchmaker could see that particular referral. The next question is from Dana. There was a private checkbox on the referral. What does that do? That actually ties in with the previous question. That just makes the referral private. So believe that only the matchmaker will see it at that point. Okay. The next question is from Dana. Is there a report that the agency can run that will show every client that was referred to their agency and who, not sure what that word is, and who, which agency they were referred by? We have a lot of different referral types of reports. Let's see, I just want to make sure that I understand that question. Every client that was referred to their agency and which agency they were referred by. So I'm going to log in as the Julie Test Agency because that's the agency that received the referral. And let's see, I'm trying to, oops, there you go. Okay, so now I'm logged in as the agency that received the referral. I'm going to go to my reports. And in the community and referrals, we see that I have a few different reports. The VI SPDAT referral detail, let's see if that's the one that would work for you. Want to see the community queue referrals. We'll just go through, let's go from August 1st to today's date, just to see if we get some data here. Now we're running this report. It's just going to take a minute to run. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to take a look at the other questions we have. Okay, so we don't have anything on here because it's, again, it's a training environment, but what you can see here is you would see the client's name, their user, the unique ID, date of birth, how many days pending, contact info, last check-in date, and notes. Not sure if that would give you exactly the information that you're looking for, but because we don't have any data here and I don't really have anything to compare it to, but that might work. Okay, let me go back to my questions here. Okay. So Becky, I'm going to unmute you here because I'm seeing a couple of different comments, and I want to make sure that I understand the question that you're asking. So, okay, Becky, you're unmuted. What?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so we had somebody the matchmaker said was on the community queue, so we could not, nobody else could see her but her.
Okay.
So it was on the community queue referral list if we're to look through the list. So she couldn't, so that's one question. And then the whole, I have clients who, before we knew about the pending feature, we had already enrolled them in the program from the community queue. Like
Mm-hmm.
I got from the matchmaker via email, not through the queue, not through the pending system, referral system. I got it afterwards. So do I still need to go through the matchmaker to have them removed from the community queue? But they were removed because they're enrolled in the program.
So, okay, so we'll take one question at a time. The first one, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that first question was.
The
So,
question was the name on the community queue. Who can see them? What happens if there's a name that only one person can see? The
okay, so
matchmaker says there's a name on there. We can't see it
okay,
as referring out agencies or whatever we're called.
okay. So if there's a name that only the matchmaker can see, then that means that the referral has been marked as private. And so the matchmaker, once the matchmaker sends that referral on to the agency should be able to see that referral. Is that not happening for you?
The master referral list, that name's not even on the list for any of us to see.
Okay. Well, the
So
matchmaker
she
should be able to
must be
see it
marked
though.
private somewhere.
So is the matchmaker not even able to see it?
So the matchmaker's the only one who can see it.
Okay. Um, well, then the next step in the process then is really for the matchmaker to send the referral on. Um, so you want to be able, you want other users to be able to see that client
We're
and
trying to, so the history, we're trying to clean up our list.
mm-hmm,
And all looking at the master referral list, the master list with everybody who's on the community queue.
mm-hmm.
The only one who could, there's one name that two of our agencies can't see, but the matchmaker agency is the only one who can see that name on the list, the master referral list.
Okay.
So that's the question. Is that normal? Is that because it's marked private somewhere?
Yeah, I believe that that would be it's marked private.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll follow up with our matchmaker to make sure that that name's whatever.
Okay. And so for the second question, then, if you wouldn't mind repeating that again, so I can.
Okay. So before we got a name from the matchmaker via email, not via HMIS.
Mm-hmm.
So the client was already registered and enrolled into the program that it was referred to, already accepted, enrolled. How do we go back? Because now it's showing as pending in process because we got educated that we needed to accept the referrals through the system, but we didn't know we had to enroll them through the pending status. So how do I get that client off of pending who's already enrolled in the program?
Well, the matchmaker,
Like the cart
yeah,
before the horse.
so unfortunately, there's really not a way to go back in and update those referrals to indicate that they were that the client was enrolled through the referral. So it sounds like the client has already been enrolled and it wasn't through the referral. So the client still is on the queue technically. Um, yeah.
Do we
So
and say self-housed because the client's in the program?
well, no, I would say yeah, if you do that, I mean, it's not really self-housed. This I know this is kind of a new process for everybody, and so I think it's normal to expect that there are going to be a few glitches in the beginning, and not all of the clients are going to show up as having been enrolled through referral. I think, like I said, that's kind of to be expected. So the data at first is going to look a little wonky. And I can't believe I just used the word wonky. Um, but what you can do is you can send something to our help desk and ask them to remove the clients from the queue because they were in fact enrolled. And it's just, you'll have to, keep in mind that those clients aren't necessarily going to show up in reports because the enrollments were processed outside of the referral.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not necessarily ideal, but that is the way that we have to do it. And just know, this, like I said, this is the beginning of the process for you guys. Um, so there will be a few hiccups along the way in the beginning, but those should be ironed out as everybody works through the steps.
All right. Thank you, Julie.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. So, looking through the rest of the questions, and I don't see any new ones. So, if there are no additional questions, nope, doesn't look like it. Okay. So, yeah, so I don't see any additional questions. So I will call it a day. Thank you all for participating here in this training, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.